part, I'm going to let my executive director say hello, which I'm pretty excited because she's wonderful, new, great ideas, and this is Rebecca Bacon.
I always feel so new. Good morning. Okay, sit down, relax. Thank you for coming to Hillsborough this morning. Yeah, thanks Glenn for getting us started with some energy. This is a great turnout and this is a wonderful thing. I really want to start by thanking the children's board team to work on this. Maria Negron actually asked, could we do this? And we of course said yes. It's clearly a good time to do this. And I want to thank the children's board team. It's Trish, James, Glenn Brown, Brenda Tavares, Chevelle Santiago, and of course, Maria Negron for the contribution. I also want to thank our panelists. I think this is a great collaboration and this is something that we need to do more of in this community, especially across the funders, to collaborate and support our nonprofit community. Children's Board is really working on lots of different things right now. You'll hear some of those things from our team members here. But we did strategic planning with our board in April, which was really long overdue. But it gave us an opportunity to kind of look at, where we've been and where we're going. And really a lot of what came out of that were some administrative and operational changes that we've been working on, streamlining, improving, making our work more efficient, but also helping to better support our nonprofit partners. So it's really exciting times here. Also, we looked at some kind of service strategy priorities that the board and some community members brought to us, and Chevelle talked about that. So I'm really excited about our progress and I'm excited about the fact that we have such a great turnout. We have so many wonderful nonprofit partners, and I'm smiling because I've got lots of old friends in here. I'm not that new in this and lots of new partners and new people. So this is the new training for us. So we want to see how this goes. We really want your feedback today. We do have a part 2 on September 22nd, and I think the registration is closed, but there may be a few spots left. If you can get in and you're really interested in that, contact Trish. But yeah, give us the feedback. We really want to hear from the community and help you respond to obviously the children and families. So thank you for coming today and helping us.
Thank you. All right, as I mentioned, there's phones on your table also. Please sign in. Don't forget to sign in. And I neglected to say, but Rebecca will be okay, that this is being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, sorry. Don't speak to gas, but it will be recorded. Anyway, before I introduce everyone, why are we here? You could say money, I need money. That's not why you're here. You're not really here for that. You're here because you had a good idea. You're here because you want change. You're here because you want to do something and you want to figure out a way to get it done. It's just a tool. It's just a way of doing it. What you're going to find today, because some people don't understand, is there are different ways of approaching and using that tool and different institutions to help you with that. A great wide variety. Governmental. Got at least 3 of us here that are governmental. And what you'll find is we're pretty accessible, and that means federal, state, local dollars, tax dollars, because that's what we do. So our constituency are taxpayers, and that's who we have to turn to. So we're pretty stringent in terms of how we handle them. But in terms of approaching us and talking about ideas and bringing them to us, we're probably more open than most. Then we have charitable foundations, which come in a wide assortment of fashion. They tend to be a little less accessible, and you have to look them up, you have to find them, or sometimes, in some cases, they find you, depending on what you're doing. However, they're sometimes a little more flexible with what they can do with you. So there are different ways to do things, different different goals, different approaches, and then of course, different motivations, for A corporate foundation, they're gonna have the interests of usually communities where their corporations are, and then the goals of those corporations in mind when they're looking for people to fund or projects to fund. And then you have other types of foundations that came from families or community foundations that have donors that want to give basic money, all different types of funders. And we've got a nice little sample today. And so let me do a quick introduction. Kind of control. So and here's our agenda. Got introductions, which I'm about to do. We're going to talk about what makes a proposal stand. All right. So let me introduce you, everyone. You've met me. I'm Glenn Brown. I'm with the Children's Board, and everybody's new to me these days because I've been here about 26 years. So there's that. Then the far end over there, I'm going to each of them introduce themselves. So I'll start with Douglas Drews now. And Doug, would you please talk a little bit about your institution and the way you guys approach funding? But let's keep it all very short, but just to show as we go across the panel, there's a little bit of difference. So please introduce yourself and let's rock and roll.
All right, yeah, can y'all hear me? Yeah. Oh, there's a microphone, I got the not too loud. So yes, I'm Doug Griesnauer. I'm the Vice President of Community Impact for United Way Suncoast. We are a nonprofit serving Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, Sarasota, and DeSoto counties for 101 years now. We provide funding around topics of financial opportunity, or financial security, educational opportunity, and community resiliency across those 5 counties.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm diving in.
Go.
I got you.
Hey everyone, my name is Diana Santangelo. I'm with Community Foundation Tampa Bay. This microphone. Wow.
It's your government at work there. Those are your taxes.
Okay. Community Foundation's a little bit different. I actually used to work at United Way Miami, so very familiar with that work. But Community Foundation, we're really here more to support our donors and support philanthropy in the community. So we fund just about everything. We really want to make sure that those that are passionate about giving, we help them and support them along that way. So I could list you all different areas that we fund in, but it's basically everything. If someone has a passion for it, we want to be able to connect our donors and our funders to your work.
Excellent. Thank you. Aaron, go ahead and say hello.
Hi. Good morning. My name is Erin Baird. I'm the Director of Grants at Allegheny Franciscan Ministries. We're a little bit different. We're a public charity grant maker. We're actually a part of a larger Catholic hospital system. Our roots date back to Catholic Hospital Ministries here in Florida, 3 different regions of Florida. So there's more to that I can share, but that's, we're not a private foundation. We're a nonprofit charity grant maker. Our focus areas currently are climate justice and care for creation. So you'll see that face theme through our work, and capacity building initiatives. We also have a mission inspired grants, which I manage, which are small grants to nonprofits. This year working in improving access to healthcare and economic mobility.
Excellent. Thank you. Tina, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Tina James. I'm with Florida Blue and the Florida Blue Foundation. Florida Blue Health Insurance Company. We do health solutions for Floridians across the state of Florida. Specifically, I oversee our West region, so that includes 14 counties. So Fernando all the way down to Collier. And within our West region, we focus on 5 specific pillars. So we focus on food security, mental health, mental well-being, health improvement. So the last 2 years, that's been around maternal health. We also focus on education and community design.
Morning, I'm Jim Roth, and I'm a contracts manager with Hillsborough County's Healthcare Services Department. And the Healthcare Services Department funds providers for our Hillsborough County Healthcare Plan, which is the indigent healthcare plan. And we recently just did a big RFA, for opioid settlement funds, which was $26 million for 2 years. And it's in the areas of prevention, education, treatment, and recovery.
Morning, everyone. My name is Walter Jennings. I serve as the Director of Student Success Initiatives for Helios Education Foundation. We're actually in the midst of celebrating our 20-year anniversary, so I'm very excited about that. Our overall goal and vision is to really support all students in the attainment of a post-secondary degree, as we believe that that's one of the primary ways that helps students who have the maximum earning potential for their life, and it also has benefits for society as well. The way that we go about identifying and helping to get to that goal are really in three key focus areas along the education continuum, which is helping to increase third grade reading rates, helping to increase college enrollment, and then helping to increase post-secondary attainment through wraparound services for those students who are in college.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Shabelle Santiago. I'm the Programs for Hillsborough here at the Children's Board. We're one of 12 CFBs, Children's Services Council here in Florida. We're a special taxing district and we generate revenue and invest that back into programs for the success of children and families here in Hillsborough County. We have 4 focus areas, which are children are relevant to that, children are healthy and safe, children are ready to learn and succeed, and family support.
Excellent, thank you, all of you. And actually, as we move into the next section, you might also yeah, in terms of what makes a proposal stand out. Also talk about how people might be able to get in touch with you in terms of that stand out. So, but I'm going to start with Doug over here and work our way down again.
Sure. So what makes a proposal stand out to us? So again, you get in contact with us by following us on social media, United Way Suncoast. We present all of this information or going to our website, unitedwaysuncoast.org, about what's going on. Our main funding priorities, we do typically provide 3-year long-term investment strategies. That's really exciting if you're in it, but we just started ours January 1st for that next 3-year investment cycle. So 2028 is when that next one's up. But that being said, we also do small grants, known as ACE grants, that help improve your advocacy capacity and equity work in your community. And knock on wood, hopefully, Aaron doesn't do anything, not you, Aaron, but Aaron, the possible storm that's got there. But if it does, we have a disaster recovery fund that's also out there as well to help individuals. Really what we're looking for is a clarity of work, strong outcomes in the work that's being done, connected to an evidence base or evidence informed practice. I'm probably stealing the thunder of a lot of my colleagues, like the same thing. But along those pieces, and a good example, just to drive it home, of something in one of those ACE grants that applied to us was a nonprofit known as Disability Achievement Center that actually needed some help providing translation services for some of their individuals. They were able to provide some services and had previously relied on volunteers for translation support, which is good when you have volunteers. And so, people have asked for translation services before, that's good work, but it didn't necessarily stand out. What made it stand out to us was their level of innovation, in which they actually partnered with a local translation company known as Translate Live just across the bridge over in Pinellas County. And so they're working with them to provide those translation services, but also building local connections and supports, which I thought was really, really cool. And so it's this concept of capacity building that really stood out to us, because they're not just going out to some, anonymous company, some national group, but really looking locally at what are the resources we have here in our community that can build each other up, that we really, really appreciate. So that's some stuff we look at, and that's an example of something that stood out.
Excellent, thank you. Diana, take us with it.
So, and we might be a little bit repetitive here. I would definitely agree with a lot of that. I'd say one thing, I remember a proposal when I was in Miami and I was funding our work in education. And this organization managed to weave this beautiful story of a child, a day in the life of a child, and weave their program into it. And it was just, don't steal that idea, because then it's not so unique. But I loved about the application that there was a story, like I saw that child, I saw what their day's experience was. I saw when the mentors were there at lunch, I saw the conversations that they had. And I love storytelling, but I will say that's just a piece of it. Your heart is just a piece of this work. And I want to be very transparent and handful about advice, because I think the interesting thing too for me is that I have been on different sides. I have been a funder. I have been in programs. I have applied for grants. I've received them. I've not received them. So my position is a little bit unique. In fact, I told you I was like, I'm a great person for this. But, I think it makes it very helpful because I see it through so many different lenses. So when you combine that storytelling, that powerful storytelling, but you need to back it up
And sometimes people are like, oh, data, it's not just data, it's not just numbers, it's about kids. It is. But as someone who's reviewing all of these applications, if you think about it, like everyone that's taking the time in this field to do this work, they all have a heart, they all have big hearts. We would not be a nonprofit most likely if we didn't. So recognize that you're in a sea of really incredible fabulous people working with kids. How are you going to stand out? What makes it different? And so that clarity is really important, backing up your story with this is precisely what we do, this is how it works. This is how we can show that it works through quantifiable evidence. And that can be tricky advice because some of you are like, well, I want to start something new. Well, that's a cool part of the community foundation. We do look at those projects and we recognize that everyone has to start somewhere. I myself did. I started a youth leadership program. I left the high school classroom. I was like, I miss kids. I want to be back with kids. And I legitimately built a curriculum, built a program, and I had to convince 20 people on my board to fund it. And so sometimes you might not initially think that you have that data or that backing or all this experience, but what partners are you working with? Who are you showing that you can partner with? What have you done maybe in other organizations or has your staff done? So start thinking about all of those ways that you can really provide evidence and build a case for your work. But weaving those pieces together is really important. Have that story, show the impact that your work does, but really back that up with content and data and the true impact and how you're measuring that. I'd say those are probably some things that come to mind.
I would say, when you're answering the responses, we're very intentional, especially I'll talk about our TAL grant program. We're intentional about only asking for the questions that we're using to make decisions. So please take time and answer those thoroughly and completely. It is, as you can, you'll probably know in your experience, it's very competitive now. There's more need than there's funding available. So, of course, that's why we're addressing this type of question, but we're really looking for ones that answer those questions, that have alignment with our focus areas. Some organizations might provide a variety of services. So some that specialize in if it's access to healthcare and they're a clinic, or they're doing direct healthcare services, those organizations are gonna kind of stand out because there's a direct alignment. For those that are doing multiple different programs, you really need to connect the dots for us, because we're not familiar with all of the organizations and their programs. We also really trying to we use an external review committee and we fund in multiple areas. So we have folks from different areas, Miami, Palm Beach, North St. Lucie. Since we funded those areas, they are represented on the review committee. So there's really not going to be, for the Tampa Bay area, that's probably not familiar with the organization. So it's really helpful to assume that we don't know your organization and really be clear about that. So maybe have someone read your application beforehand that's not familiar with your organization, like a family member or something, to see if they can understand the proposal. Those are a couple of things. And then just tying the need and being very clear to articulate a specific need and making sure that the budget reflects that. A lot of times we'll look at the budget and we'll look at the need and they're both good separately, but not always making the connection between. So.
Super.
So I think it's the only corporate partner here. Our mix is very interesting and it's different. So we support basically 3 different areas. So we have our, and we're going to funding a little bit later about what we support, but we have our community investments. For us, those are our larger game-changing grants and opportunities. Those are ones that are statewide and they're competitive. But then we have the opportunity to also support organizations regionally, and that's the majority of the work that I oversee, what we do regionally within our work. And so for us, looking for something that's kind of like different, like we're looking self-insurance, but we're also looking to, provide services for our communities. So sometimes it's an interesting mix. I think a recent proposal that we got and we were super excited about, it allowed us to share our mission and allow us to reach a bunch of people. But Tampa, the Florida Orchestra, they researched our program. They really dug into what we do in mental health and mental well-being. And they put a very unique and creative proposal in front of us. So they're having like a series of concerts that's happening in May, which is like mental health month. So for me, I'm like, check mental health months. That's one of our key pillars. And they really gave us an opportunity not only to support the work that they're doing, but also being able to give in information and education around mental health awareness and how music can help with, mental health and kind of like relaxing and meditation and all of those things. So we were able to build together. So they started with a proposal, we built onto it, and so now we come up with something that's really amazing. For May, I can work with the Florida Orchestra and those individuals that actually come to those concerts. And we have the ability to talk about, mental health and do all those different things. To us, we probably would support it because we feel like thing we do, especially from like a corporate perspective. But the fact that we have the ability to tailor something that was really cool, and our vice president of behavioral health is here in Singapore. So it gives him the opportunity to talk a little bit about why mental health is so important for the Blue. Some of the resources that we provide, not only to just our members, but also to the general community as well. So opportunities like that, it's a little different outside of the box, something that we can work on like together are things that stand out to me and which are very facilitated for us to work through.
I was gonna get just a tip maybe coming from like the governmental, that that there's gonna be a review panel. So do anything you can to make it easier on that review panel, repeat the questions, all of it in the order that they're in, make sure you answer every part of it. Follow the page limits, meaning don't go over and then don't provide too little. Anything that you can do that's gonna make that easier for that review team, you're gonna score better and more likely get funded. So, and then a proposal that recently stood out is, I mentioned before, the opioid request for proposals. And we had one that was for a series of yoga and mindfulness classes for people in recovery. But it's just so well written, it describes everything. It followed everything to the T. It's one of the few agencies who there's a section that requires, you put all of your funding sources, and probably 80% of them only did the funding sources for that program. But they listed all of the rest of their funding sources, and there was a reason for that, because we wanted to see how much of that agency we'd be funding. But other people didn't even answer that at all. They just did, this recovery program that I'm doing, or this treatment program that I'm doing. And again, they were just so clear in their description. They said that they're going to serve 800 clients the first year, and then we're going to serve 700 the second year. But then they explained it because of the drop off in the retention rates and things like that. So it just really was, stellar proposal. So it's one of the ones, that we're funding and we're writing contract.
So what I'll say is that it's very important to have strong, measurable goals that are in alignment with your organization's mission, vision, and strategy, rather than just the qualifications of the grant. As an organization, Helios is we're an invitation-only organization, and so for us, we really don't necessarily have an open process. And so for us, it's really about building relationships and partnerships. And so we're really looking to partner with organizations that are in alignment with the work that we are doing, not necessarily organizations that are just looking to receive a grant from us, if that makes sense. What we like to say is that we may be short-term funders, but long-term partners. Meaning, again, there's always a relationship that's established in place. And we're also a data-informed organization as well, as Diana mentioned, when it comes to making sure that the numbers and the research is in alignment with your story, and utilizing that to kind of broaden the reach of your story. And an example of that, as I mentioned, we are an invitation-only organization. However, for the first time in 7 years, we actually conducted an RFP this year. And part of the reason why we did that is because we have a brand new community engagement team, which I'm a part of. And so this afforded us the opportunity to really canvass the counties that we serve and look for potential new partners within those areas. And one of the proposals that we were able to review was from an organization called the Able Trust, which is an organization that really supports the progression of students who are experiencing disabilities. And what was very interesting about this proposal is that they didn't necessarily lean into the disabilities of their students as much as they leaned into the opportunity gaps that exist within the organization. And so what it allowed us to do was to be able to see alignment there. And then the story of the demographic and the students that they're serving became a really strong secondary reinforcing reason of why a partnership would be beneficial. And so really making sure that as you're getting into looking for potential grant opportunities, that you're really researching the organization rather than just the grant itself. And making sure that their values and their mission and their strategies are in alignment with some of the strategies and mission of your organization as well.
First, I just want to just take a moment and acknowledge how much work goes into putting a proposal together. And so if you've ever done one, it's been one, thank you for that time, and we appreciate it. In terms of one particular proposal that stands out, it's more of a theme across proposals that I've seen, or we've seen, and to piggyback off what Diana said, the story, that there's a flow within that proposal that connects the story of the services that are being proposed, which are also connected to the budget. And then also in aligned with the intent of the RFP. So we release our funding to RFPs, special proposals, RFAs, requested application, cards, then research. So making sure that the proposal submitted align with the intent, because these funding want to be. And so when you find that nice flow of the story of the proposed services, connecting to the funding requests and seeing how they connect to the outcome and impact with the community. And that the proposer has done the research for the community. So if you were children, we're looking for the program. So providing local data, local research, the national research, seeing that you have done surveys, stuff like that, that supports the need, that supports your proposal, and it all of them connect and flows nicely. Those are the ones that really stand out and move forward.
Excellent. Hopefully you all got some bullet points from that and we can try to get back to it. But everybody had some really nice, succinct things that make it stand out. I hope you were able to catch that. Can you move us on? I'm not sure when, maybe after each person speaks, if you turn your microphone off and then on, and maybe that'll get rid of that slight hum. Oh, Patrick's saying, no, that's not it. So that's true. Yeah. Working, but. Oh, there we go. Now, this time I'm gonna let Chevelle start. She didn't know I was gonna do that to her. But that may, you know, as things repeat, other people can think about what they want to emphasize and focus. So, Chevelle, would you speak a little bit about, how to find opportunities, funding priorities today? And so if you're one of the children's board, talk about children's board priorities. Each of these folks, as they've hinted or spoken to directly, have some slightly different priorities, different ways in which they want to go about things. How about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, your ways.
I don't know what.
Well, first of all, how to find them? Have our people website. There is a section on the website, funding opportunities. I encourage you to sign up for a newsletter. Also sign up for funding notifications. Also, you can reach out to me directly to set up a meeting. Speak a little more about their funding opportunities. I love to have meetings with folks who learn about the organizations. There's just so much more on out there. Second learns how we have that I'm just one so much. But in terms of our funding priorities, I mentioned earlier, we have our more focus areas, which are children on the track, and children with families support, helping and safe, and as we recognition, we've been which we do planning, so we've been case areas that I think prioritize summer camp, elevation for childcare, supports and teams, support from the house, also early learning support,
and children that lack the and the funding, because this past summer, we were able to open up, for some summer camps block, so we are making this progress in this area. I also funded a program, that was supporting children with their disabilities, with autism, and we are going to releasing some RFPs in the fall, the fall month, the end of the month, next month. We're here, we're in the fall. So we're really excited about that, and that is in progress, and that has come out of our strategic plan. So, so that's what we have now in regards to our, always our focus areas, but then our new, areas that we're at, and just stay tuned with regards to what that time that is ongoing in this area. But one more thing I wanted to add to was also, looking at our small nonprofit community, I think it's an offering to keep this training, we want to reach more small nonprofit and jump.
Don't they have to-
Yeah, I wanna
you
jump
gotta
in
keep-
there. But we have some tools and resources too that we're going to be, that we currently have, but we're also going to be putting out to help nonprofits.
Awesome, awesome. And actually, the note of timelines, different people do have different fiscal years sometimes too. So that's also a notable thing. Local government has a different timeline than federal government. And then various funders have their own often annual timeline. So that's also something to keep in mind that she alludes to. But
I'm not actually around this area, but also, we also have emergency grant, and that's ongoing throughout the year, and we have a little flyer, if you will, on our website, take a look at that, but we want to hear from the community, and if we reach out anytime during the year about an emergency grant that we can talk for, but with emergency grants, we're looking to hear from the community of something that's unfolded, trends that wasn't anticipated, and it's a short term, like, grant, you don't have to wait. It doesn't go out through our fans. Throughout the year. And the thing you call, reach out and we'll have a meeting.
excellent, thank you. Walter?
Sure. So I mentioned previously our three focus areas as an organization. And so geographically, we're really honed in on the major metropolitan areas within the state of Florida when it comes to investment opportunities. And so for us, that includes Hillsborough, Pinellas, Orange, Osceola, Miami-Dade, and Broward. And then we do have some statewide initiatives as well. And in addition to that, we also, again, are a data-informed organization. Researching data is a really important part, again, of our decision-making process and really informing the opportunities that exist. And we really utilize data in order to identify opportunity gaps and where the greatest needs are when it comes to providing support for those students that really will help to level the playing field in order for them to achieve the college degree. From a priority standpoint, we also have a system of metrics in alignment with that data that's also listed on our website as well. And so for each one of those focus areas, we actually have metrics that we've actually been able to extract from the data that we utilize. Some of those data points, for example, in college enrollment include FAFSA completion, SAT, ACT prep, participation in accelerated coursework. Some of those metrics when it comes to post-secondary attainment, our persistence to the second year. We know that there's a huge level of attrition when we talk about college students going from their first year to their second year. And so those are, again, some of the metrics that we really hone in on and look for when we are evaluating proposals. And so I would advise anyone, again, that may be interested in potentially having a conversation with us to make sure that you go to our website and take a look at them. And as Chevelle mentioned as well, for any organization that you're interested in, I think it's a really important part of, again, making sure that you research and understand what that organization's values are as well, in addition to just the grant process, which is really oftentimes a snapshot and a picture of exactly what they may be looking for with that particular grant. But it also too is a peek into that organization as a whole. So just making sure that you have good understanding about that organization.
Awesome, thanks, Paul. Indicators are huge. But it's sure.
And the county's funding opportunities are all on the county's website, which is hcfl.gov, Hillsborough.Florida.gov. And they're in actually the procurement portal, and it's called UNA procurement. It's EUNA. It used to be called Bonfire, which I think is much easier than just about a month ago it changed. But it's EUNA, UNA or UNA. I'm not exactly sure because I'm procurement. But, and again, the funding priorities are the ones that I mentioned earlier. It's just specifically for healthcare services, but the procurement portal will have all of the county's funding. But that's things to support the Hillsborough County Healthcare Plan and currently the opioid settlement funds, and we should have another round of another RFA for the opioid in 2 years. So that was just.
Absolutely, thank you.
I'm trying to figure out how to make sure I got that.
Take a breath, Tina, take a breath. They've been putting a lot out there. So.
So earlier I mentioned, we kind of have like these three pillars of what we work to fund, like affordably. So we have like our community investment grants. Like I mentioned before, those are grants that we consider that are game-changing grants. Those grants are up to $100,000 a year, up to 4 years in those three areas. So those go through an RFP process. So those areas are security, mental health and mental well-being, and health improvement or maternal health is what we're focusing on this year. Those are the grants that are statewide, they're competitive, there is a time frame for each of those, so our food security grants and our mental health grants, those typically come online around March and April of each year. Those do go to a competitive review process with internal board employees and also external community stakeholders. They review those grants, provide their recommendations back to the community investments team. And then they send that to our Florida Blue Foundation board, and the board votes on those grantees and how that money is awarded. With those three large community investment grants, within those we do typically have 2 areas of focus within those 2 areas. So for this year, for example, mental health, we did a focus on teens and senior like isolation and loneliness and things like that. And then we also had a focus on those that support mental health and like rural communities. Same thing for like food security. We did a focus on rural communities as well, but also like how do we make food a little bit more attainable, affordable, and sustainable. This year on maternal health grant, that grant opportunity actually comes online on Monday. On the 18th, and that's focusing on chronic illnesses or diseases as it relates to pregnant women. So you can think about digestional diabetes, that's on the comes first there. Hypertension, high cholesterol, all of those things that affect pregnant women. And the other focus of that particular grant, services around postpartum care. Mental health and those issues, for pregnant moms after delivering unprotected baby. The other arm is the regional arm, which is what I focus on. One thing I want to make sure that I emphasize is I have more than just Hillsborough County. I have 14 counties that I'm responsible for. And it's my job for Florida Blue to show up charity in each of those 14 counties. So even though I live here, we support here in Hillsborough County, probably the most, but I still have to support Nando, I still have to support DeSoto, I still have to support Clays and Henry, and kind of like all of those other counties. That process is a little different. Our funding priorities, we do look at those 3 that I mentioned previously, but we look at education very similar to like Walter and his team at Helios. We look at kindergarten readiness, making sure our girls are ready for kindergarten. We also focus on that 3rd grade reading rates, and then we also focus on post-secondary education. So whether it's scholarships or college or organizations that help kids get to that point, but we also look at vocational and trade school programs that individuals are looking to go through. Our community vitality pillar, it's a little broader and it's a little bigger, but it allows us to focus on what makes the community vibrant. So our arts programs, our zoos, our aquariums, generational poverty is one of those areas, workforce development for adults. Whether they're looking to upskill or if they're looking, someone wants to become a nurse or a CNA, student support programs that work in that space with workforce development. And I think all of us in some capacity, focus on disaster relief or, resiliency in communities, so we focus on, a lot of that work too. I feel like I'm everywhere. I feel like I see everybody everywhere. But I'm really accessible. It may take a couple of weeks, and some people know, it may take a couple of weeks to get on the calendar, but I love to go out and meet organizations. I love to learn about what you do and how you do it. It's a little different than reading on paper, but when you have the ability to kind of go out and really understand what they're doing and the programs that they're working on, it allows me the opportunity to see, okay, affordably, really fit into kind of this year, what we do and how we like to show up in the community. And I'm available, I have cards, I'm happy to connect with people and meet with people and learn about. We also have our copy of newsletter, so all of our granting opportunities are in our newsletter. It's probably easier to do that instead of you trying to remember, oh, what everything's to be for, like on Monday when this grant becomes available. But yeah, I love our community, I love the work that all of us do, so I'm just saying,
Excellent. Yeah, very excellent. Aaron, share with us.
Sure. First, how do you find us or where to find our information? Our website, AFMFL, or just Google Allegheny Francis Ministry. It's, no H, that's, Pennsylvania. And this is a small little town of Allegheny, New York, on the border of, New York and Pennsylvania. But you mentioned fiscal year, this is, we have a different fiscal year too, ours starting July 1st. So sorry to make things more complicated for you. So like for us, we're in fiscal year 26 now, that started July 1st. And this is a really busy time for us. A lot of our programs are opening up and around right. So next week, we actually have a deadline. So if you're interested in any of our programs, we have a deadline for our TAL grant program, which is probably the most aligned with your organization's work. And that's due the 21st. It's a general operating grant for small nonprofits that work in those two areas I mentioned, economic mobility or increasing access to healthcare. There's a lot of eligibility requirements related to that, so you're going to want to look at that before you apply. The application is not burdensome, as I've been told, because we do ask a feedback question on the application. So we look at that every year and really try to be cognizant to that. So I would just draw your attention to that. I do offer office hours for that, although I think it's just Thursday and Friday that's left because the application is due next week. But we do have 2 cycles of that. So there will be a cycle, the economic mobility cycle in the spring, which is really starting in January, not with the spring, but it'll be awarded in March. So we do offer, so I drive you to the website, there's recorded webinars. If you didn't attend the webinar, you can watch the webinar if you don't want to. The same content is on the website, but there's some questions asked. So I would drive you to that. The other program, the ACOR grant program, which is designed to honor our sponsors. So a lot of folks don't meet that requirement and have a connection with the Franciscan Sisters of Allegheny, which by the way, we have been connected with St. Joseph's and St. Anthony's in this area. Same thing. And then I mentioned before our climate justice and care preparation, that deadline just got pushed back a little bit. So we just awarded grants late spring last year, and we'll be announcing a new cycle soon. And there's 2 focus areas under that. Extreme heat is very timely right now for outdoor workers, education around that, coalition building around that. And then climate gentrification, and affects different marginalized communities being pushed out of the land and places where they live. So we're really excited about those unique different programs, but that's what we're looking at for climate justice and gentrification. And the nonprofit capacity might be something that a lot of funders are doing it, and I've been thinking I really want to get with the Tampa Bay funders so that we can talk about. Or did we do some of that informally through email? But a lot of us are offering some type of fast healing program and so to make sure we're on the same page about that, but we're launching a sabbatical program, which is very innovative and exciting and creative. If you haven't heard about it, it's open right now. There's a wonderful webinar that we hosted that you can watch on our website. I don't know the deadline off the top of my head, but it's this month. And we also have a fundraising cohort usually, that one's winding down. I think we'll probably do that one again. It's with a company called Bonterra that provides coaching, but also the database kind of support and wellness grants. We offer that. And in the past, at least for now, since there's been a lot of interest, we have to be a past grant partner, but I think we've opened that to the past 5 or 10 years. So yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities and excitement about that. So we want to be able to support the nonprofit workforce, we know that you're working with short staff, not a lot of money, getting burned out. We want to address those issues. And so we're excited to be able to support that.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, so shocker, you can find information on our website. I was going to tell you what it was, and I legitimately just Googled Community Foundation Tampa Bay, and then I was going to check, and that fell through. So nonetheless, all of our opportunities are there. I shared before that community foundations, we function a little bit differently, and there are community foundations across the country. And we're all a little bit different, but in the sense that we really are guided by our philanthropist desires. But the cool part about it is I don't have to list all of our areas because we do have a competitive process every year and you will fit into one of those areas. It covers literally everything. And how that works is we try to make it as little cumbersome as possible. There's an LOI, about 1 out of 7 of our LOIs do get funded. So it is effective. Our grants average around 25,000 per grant. And then if your LOI is successful, it goes through 50 reviewers. So it goes through all of our staff, it goes through our board, we have multiple councils. So a lot of eyes are going to be on that. And then, like I shared, we get invited to a full application, and then about half of those full applications end up being funded between 10,000 and about 50,000. But there are other ways if you are not able to be funded through that process. And I'm gonna stop there for a second and share, apply. Honestly, apply. And I'm sure everyone would agree, engage. Like that is a way to engage with the work. There are so many incredible applications. We actually started a whole new process where those that, because we don't have enough funds, this specific budget is normally around, it's a little different. We invest our money and so functions a little bit differently. Each year our budget changes based on the stock market, but it's normally around $1 million to $1.5 million. It's been a little bit higher before, but we try so hard, and all these people at the table try so hard to make sure we get funds where they can be, really serve our community. And so we actually take a whole chunk that we're not able to fund that might not have risen to the top, and then we present it to our donors. We have events with our philanthropists in the community. We say, these are incredible programs. We've gone through it. We had so many people look at it. What do you think? And then the donor goes, I don't care about that. So always, always, always apply. And I would also say that at the Community Foundation, we have what's called our critical needs list. And so that is open throughout the year. And that is a need that is unexpected. It's not capital campaign. It's not, just general odds or programming. It's our one van broke down and we cannot transport children. Like, oh my God, please help us. And we move very, very quickly. There's an application. You can literally click on critical needs list. Obviously, after hurricanes and natural disasters, that gets a lot of traction, and we work so fast in so many hours to make sure that we can match our donors to your immediate needs in that moment. I'll also say another great reason to engage, and I'm sure folks would agree, is after the hurricane, I was actually in meetings with a lot of our living providers, and they were talking about the trauma that these children have gone through. I mean, I even know through my sister's friend, a window exploded and mom screaming and showing her child on a kayak and trying to get the puppy. And when you think about, oh my God, this poor child that's 5 years old has just gone through that, and we're in this whole conversation about how do we address that? What do? We have to work so quickly. We call the people we know do this work. We can't know what every single person does. I wish we did. And we try really, really hard. And like Tina said, engage, reach out, connect, just share about your work. But we had to move quickly. Who can serve these kids that are in need of mental health support? And we get together and we found out, wait, I know this org, I know that, or we start calling each other as funders, like, who do you know?
So even if you don't get a grant, I know it seems like we're focused on grant receiving funds. That's just a piece of it. Make sure you know the funders because we want to know you too. There's some faces out here that you can get to meet. And none of that means, and I've done the same, like be as many places as you can be, create those relationships, invite people to events, let us see, like Steve said, not just on paper what you're doing. Let us see your work in action. So take every opportunity. And I know, speaking for the Community Foundation, if I can do it or someone else can do it, like, do this, we can check that out, or at least we know we want to make that relationship work and learn. So those are the things that I would really highly encourage you all to do. But definitely check out our competitive process. It's on an annual basis. We are releasing those dates, I think, in the next month, but you'll see those LOIs come out, I believe, around November, December. So get on our listserv as well. And then that critical needs list, that is open year round to any 501c3. So you can apply. Our donors actually go on a platform and they stand like where their interests are, where their passions are, and where they really want to put their money. So you want to be out there as well and create those relationships in a lot of different ways.
And now you have me. And so I would say funding priorities at United Way Suncoast are funding for programs that support low to moderate income individuals getting by in our communities. Because I don't know if you've seen recently, but it's kind of hard out there. And so when we talk about low to moderate income individuals, we actually do something known as the ALICE report. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's actually research that's put out by United Way of Northern New Jersey for all of our counties that showcases how much it actually costs to get by in our communities. In Ellis County, for example, a family of 4 is actually the highest the cost for any county in Florida. It's highest over in Ellis County, and our 5-county area averages about $100,000 for that family of 4 to get by. And so the families that need help are probably more than the families that are traditionally thought of. And so our funding priorities reflect that. We make sure that there is programming and support so that everyone can get to that threshold where they can get by. And we know from the best research that the way to do that is through the educational opportunity of our students, the financial security of our families and adults, and the community resiliency of everybody. And so funding priorities that focus on those areas is what we ultimately like to focus on. The other thing to note is that we are what's called outcomes-based funding. And what I mean for that is that if you run a workforce development program, we give you money in order to get X number of people jobs, get them high-paying jobs, get them quality. We don't care if you're paying for their boots or paying for your salary or paying for this other thing. We don't necessarily pay by budget items. We pay by outcomes. As long as you're hitting those outcomes and achieving what you told us you would achieve, you get that money. We try to be as flexible as possible. Understanding that some other entities, because of different regulations that are imposed on them by states and governments, can't be that flexible. So we try to be that flexible so that we can fill in those gaps as it were to your programs, to your services. So consider that in that work. In terms of funding priorities today, we are having a lot more conversations with our nonprofits of ways you all can be collaborative in this space. And so the more that you can talk to the other people at this table that work with you and collaborate and make a joint application, the stronger it looks as you're going through those things. And also, if you're struggling with visas, again, Aaron mentioned a lot of us are doing capacity building, so we should talk. Because we work with a group called Results First, where we actually pay you to go through a cohort that focuses on those outcomes. If you don't know necessarily what your best outcomes are in your program or how to measure them or what it looks like, talk to us and we can fund you to go through a program to get that skill development and expertise. Or some of you know exactly what your outcomes are, but you still need some support in promoting those in the best way, sharing that story. Wherever you are in your results journey, you can talk to us and we can provide you some technical assistance to build you up on that.
Fantastic. Really good tips from all of you. Really appreciate it. Just a real quick, I need to do a favor for my colleagues here as we move into this next session. How many of you have applied for grants before? All right. And so the rest of you, it's brand new. So there are a couple terms you might need: RFP, request for proposals; RFA, request for applications; LOI, letter of interest. Competitive grant means it's going to be a group of people that review your grant. Non-competitive grant, or they approach you, like Helios, it's going to be a discussion. It's going to be a different sort of thing. There's going to be some targeted outcomes. Outcomes, they can be, outcomes are some sort of social achievable goal thing, you're gonna raise reading levels. Or deliverables, you're gonna build a bench so people can sit down. Couple of very important sorts of terms to pay attention to when you're looking at funding. With that in mind, Doug, you may be noticing a pattern. I'm gonna let you start this one in terms of, let me switch the thing here. To, yes. Did I get the right one? Did I pass it? Okay, good. Okay, common mistakes in grants.
So this sounds obvious, but it definitely isn't. Answer the questions.
Oh, you may also notice some patterns, and please feel free to repeat the ones that are there, just a hint.
So I'm just saying, like, when someone asks you, and we've seen this a lot of times, we're like, what are the number of people that you plan to serve? And they're like, you'll serve these people, but now's the best time for me to tell you a story about those people. Thanks, but there's another place for you to provide that information. And I will tell you, our grant reviewers, we have volunteer grant reviewers that review all of our applications. We typically have 5 or 6 reviewing at a time, and they're probably reviewing 15 or 20 applications at a time. And so they might not have the time or the capacity or the mental bandwidth to be able to give that really valuable information if it's not in the right spot. And so please answer the questions as they're present. And to that end, write as if your grant reviewer is on grant number 20 that day. And why that means, feel free to repeat yourself. That's perfectly fine, right? We always encourage our volunteers to spend enough time to review it. We encourage our volunteers to review no more than 5 grants at a time. Hopefully they follow our instructions, but sometimes they don't. And so when they're not, they might skim what you've spent hours painstakingly writing. And if that's the case, please feel free to repeat yourself. Don't feel bad there, because wherever they're looking, you need to be able to answer that question. You need to be able to provide that strong piece of information that's present. Sometimes grants have what's known as a rubric, which is literally a grading system that people are reviewing your applications. If that hasn't been presented to you in a grant, ask for it. They either can give it to you or they can't, but you might as well ask. Because asking for it literally is giving you the information that they are telling their grant reviewers to look for. And so you can write, again, you're not cheating, right? You're still telling the truth, you're still being honest, but you write to that information that's really valuable. And again, the last one is that if you don't get the grant, please follow up and ask, hey, is there a way I can do better? Is there a way I can improve this? Some places are legally can't respond to that information. Some places can, so don't feel bad if they tell you no. But again, you don't know unless you ask. And so ask those questions, follow up. And the last thing I would ask, and it's been mentioned a couple of times, but feel free to connect with us on things other than grants. Because if we get to know you and get to know your processes and your pieces, we might be able to provide our insight of like, hey, we have this new grant funding that describes something you talked to us about 6 months ago. Maybe keep your ear to that. Like I said, our main grant process is a 3-year investment process, and we got about 40% of our partners who knock on our door once every 3 years, like clockwork, right? They don't have a relationship with us. They don't have that sort of partnership. So they're not the first people we're thinking of when these new opportunities come through. I'm not saying to, suck up. I'm not saying to do it for the sake of doing it. I'm saying actually think about ways to build dynamic relationships and to talk with your funders as partners in your work. Because I will tell you, and I'm sure a lot of these people will agree, like as funders, we're interested in the same stuff you're interested in, right? Like we want our communities to be successful. We want individuals who are struggling hard right now to be able to get the resources to be successful. And you all are seeing that every single day. And so build those relationships, have those conversations. In some cases, you can influence the grant writing process for the next grant by providing that information. So you have a powerful voice and don't discount yourself. That's what I've said.
Awesome.
Well, that was all very true. What can I? I was actually laughing because there's a grant I recently received and they called and said, but you didn't specify the county. And I was like, but I did here and here. And they were like, oh, well, we missed that. Go back in and add it a couple more times. I was like, okay, so that's very fair. I mean, we're all human. I've had to review hundreds of grants too. So repetition is important. I would say to add to that, it's kind of silly, but put your application in Microsoft Word or whatever, check your spelling. And it sounds very simple, and it just shows that like you're taking the time and then the work that you're doing to apply, going through that grant process. You're doing it in your own organization too. Like, what are you putting out within your own organization? And you want to mirror that. So I would say do spell check. On the other hand, we all sit around like, oh my God, that was written by AI. Like you sit there and you're like, that was legitimately written by AI. And I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole because that's like a whole different channel in itself. But just if that's not your strength, have someone else read it maybe, from your place of work or friend or neighbor place of worship, have someone read that because you know your organizations intimately and we do not. And we might know some of them, but make it very, very crystal clear for us. Treat us like we don't know anything. And I would also say, make the pitch. I know one of our things is we're looking to support vulnerable populations. So we got a grant once. I was like, well, this seems to be for families that make about 5 times what we're spending. Like, I'm not really worried about a kid learning I'm gonna say sailing or something like that. Not that that's a bad thing, but tell me why that matters. Why is that changing lives? Why is that something that we need to fund? So really hone in on what the money can do and the lives that it can affect. And that goes back to that storytelling. I'd also add, use data, use research. It's been done. If the ALICE report is great, a lot of folks use the ALICE report. If you go to our website, you will actually see a list of resources, like the Tampa Bay Partnership puts on some great stuff with the state of the region. So what Cheval was saying, if you're applying for funding in Hillsborough, use Hillsborough data. Make sure you are telling us that you know your community and you can back it up with actual data. And this is how your program or your organization is going to impact that in a positive manner. So I would definitely say the basics of grammar, use spell check, use those programs, have someone read it so it's super, super clear, but back up data. It probably also bothers me because my research is actually in the space of youth violence and community work. So I'm actually much more youth development. Here I'm doing more early learning. But when you're spitting out information, back it up. Make sure it's not just from the heart. The heart, there's a place for that, and there's a place for the stories and that qualitative work. But really make sure you're showing us that you know your community and you can address these challenges.
Trying to say something different than what I've said so far. One thing that comes to mind that Walter mentioned too is the alignment. That's just, and some of our grants are just really competitive. So if your organization, and I said it before, is not totally focused on healthcare, that's one of the programs that you're doing, that can make some of those connections and drawing the connection. So as well as connection, mental health and if you're implying mental health, but you need to state it specifically if you're addressing if you're applying for the access to healthcare piece. Some of them I feel like were asked to draw the connections for some folks, and that's not always clear. And I don't want to put all the onus on you all. We ask for feedback. So when we're asking redundant questions, actually, I've gotten a lot of good feedback lately saying, thank you for not asking the same question 3 times. Thank you for that, like only asking for what you need. We list the priority criteria that in essence is our rubric. And so you should be looking at that. So I've spent a lot of time and effort trying to be transparent on how we're evaluating things and being accountable that only the questions in the application are related specifically to how it's being evaluated. So, but when we do fall short, let us know what's not clear in the application, and the feedback calls that we do have been very helpful to me, and we do go back and look at everything and fix it next year. So I wouldn't say everything is on the applicant's fault, it's our onus. But sometimes it's just hard to understand what the organization does and who it serves. You might think you're being really clear, that's why if someone else reads the application that maybe is not as familiar with the organization, it might stand out to them as well. So like I said, we've got yours from other places, so that's very helpful. And then just one other thing that is about the budget, and everyone asks for budget different ways. We've tried to do budget in different forms. And then we've gone back to using our form so we can compare apples to apples. When I've got different budgets, it gets really confusing. I don't think it's quite fair. Just keep to the form. Try not to change it. I notice when we take it, take things out. Sometimes we'll have an open field where you can add things in, that's completely fine. I'll have people totally change and it looks like they rewrite it. If you have an issue with the formatting or something, we're happy to, I can email you it if it's a problem, if it's in the application or whatever, but please don't change it around and make things different. If the total is not more than 20,000, don't, it should be 40,000. Those are just really bad. I hate to see those mistakes because it's just gonna be brain slower. It's probably gonna be considered, so all that time that you spent. So with the budget, just try to stick to it, try not to change things on the format. If you need help with that, we're definitely going to help, and then just provide feedback so that we can make it. And like I said, I feel like we've done a lot with our TAP program where it's been received really well. But we definitely take your feedback. We take the committee's feedback, staff feedback, and applicants' feedback, and try to use that and incorporate it every year.
With our larger community investments grants, I think the biggest mistake is people don't ask questions. So if there's a part of the application that you're going through, and if it's confusing, like we have a milestone document, which is inside of our competitive grant process. So it asks you essentially, hey, what are the milestones that you're looking to meet over like the life of the grant? You're not sure how you should be completing it or filling it out. Just reach out to us. We're happy to help walk you through the process, because what happens with that, it goes to our review committee. And then they're like, okay, well, this doesn't match what they're saying, so you can't. And they'll come back and say, we shouldn't fund it, especially if they're an internal employee. They're just like, we don't want to waste our money on presenting this, they can't really explain, what their program is. So definitely ask questions. Very similar to Erin said about like the budget. Our finance team on the foundation, when I told you comb through like financials, for us, there's a rule that's called tipping. And I don't know how many people are familiar with the tipping term, but essentially, if you're asking for $300,000 on one of our competitive grants, based on that information, the financials that you provide us, it can seem as Florida Blue can own your organization if your financials can't support $300,000. So it will then make Florida Blue the owner of your nonprofit organization in the eyes of the IRS because it's considered state. So make sure all of your financial information, documents are in place. They do come through 990s. They do look for kind of like discrepancies in funding. So say last year you had $90,000 and then this year it's showing that, okay, now you have $200,000. They're going to come back and they're going to ask, what was the difference? Was that a one-time large gift? How would you jump, so incrementally, with their funding? So our finance team does, they do have due diligence of going through financials. They do also review the audit reports that we ask, because they look at the areas where the auditor would have provided like recommendations or comments or things like that. They review all of that information. So if you have questions or not sure, definitely reach out to us and ask. We're here to help with your support.
And a few things that were not mentioned, some that also were, but I won't go through those. But one is missing fatal criteria. There's often fatal criteria in a proposal. And in that RFA that we just did for the opioid, and again, that's recent, but there was a caveat that there were 4 categories and you had to apply between 10% and 100%. And that was to limit the awards. We would know we would have between 4 and 40 awards. But there was multiple agencies that didn't apply for 10% and they weren't even considered their responsible. Missing not to start with all the work they did and they weren't even, reviewed. Another thing is that you can sometimes tell as a reviewer when different people write different sections of the proposals. So, have somebody kind of coordinate it, somebody make it look like the same voice so that it's not just duplicated, because that really shows through. And then another thing is you can have cut and paste errors. When I was at the health department years ago, I was on a review team for regional HIV grants. And one agency wrote for 3 different counties. There was awards for Pinellas County, for Pasco County, and for Hillsborough County. And they were doing services in all 3, but all 3 said they were Pinellas. So they were applying for Hillsborough County grants, but it said for Pinellas. They were applying for Pasco, it said for Pinellas. You know, so that didn't go over well for their schools.
I'm not gonna lie, Jim, I'm heavy, I am the queen of technology. And I see very similar, like, copy and paste, and I'm like, they, like, if they apply for something for like state or they send it to us, I'm like, fine. Like, it's, I know that's wrong, but I think that there is some.
Well, again, it's in the context of you have a lot of other applications, but they've done that other work. So again, let's keep it in context.
And I'll just say too, that lack of being meticulous is also too potentially reflective of your organization. Is that how you run your organization as well? So whether it's unfair or not, that is, you know, part of the assessment. But really quickly, just to piggyback off of Doug's point, less is more. Meaning that not only answer the question, but don't feel like you have to fluff the question as well. Make sure that your answer is absolutely pertinent to everything that needs to be said, nothing more. Again, because of what Jim mentioned in regard to the process, there are numerous other applications as well. And so just being mindful of that will really help you to craft an application that is really to the point, but that also makes sure that it hits on, again, the questions that are being asked.
I think, you know, it's just a kind of feedback, what we were just saying. A fine example of that is when I see it's local or people in RP asking for the mission statements. And there's a whole paragraph, but it doesn't flat out just say our mission statement is. Because it really is as simple as that. I don't want you to see an RFP, RFA, ITM application and be overwhelmed that you can't do it. I appreciate that what Diana said, apply. Take it section by section and answer the question. Follow the directions. Some may have templates supporting documents. Make sure you are uploading and submitting those supporting documents that are requested in that application. You can have a beautiful story, narrative, budget, but if you needed to submit a letter of support and you didn't, that's not going to help your proposal. Other things to note is if there's a disconnect between the proposal narrative and the budget. We've talked about that, Aaron mentioned that. Another pitfall, as soon as you see a grant application, a funding release, take a look at the deadline. To talk about asking questions with the children's board, with our releases, in our timeline, there is a window of opportunity to ask questions. We are under restricted communication once a release goes out and it's live. But we want you to ask those questions. There's a specific email to submit your questions. Submit as many questions as you want. Don't give it a second thought of whether it's a silly question. What if it may be your very first time applying? Ask the question, make it as specific as possible so you can provide the best answer to your question. So definitely take a look at those deadlines and take a look at that window of opportunity. And give yourself enough time and your team time to your proposal, complete the application. You don't want to be rushing at the end if you need to get signatures or you need to touch base with your fiscal team to get financial audits for that budget. And as they mentioned earlier, make sure the program people are talking to fiscal people for that connection in your proposal. The last thing, and I think Doug mentioned, maybe we release a scoring criteria that it's a tool for you. Read your own proposal and have somebody outside your agency read your proposal, because as many of us have mentioned, we have review teams. And you don't want to leave them guessing or with questions or having to make assumptions about your proposal. You want to make it crystal clear. We leave nothing open-ended in regards to what you're going to do.
Excellent.
We're not, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry,
No, say it.
Really quick things. The first thing is be very cognizant of the format of the application or proposal as well. As far as the process, there are some organizations where when it comes to your application, you go into their system and you have to input that information, and once the application goes, it goes. And then there are other applications where you have to choose a particular system and then send them your proposal or your application. And so that kind of differentiation is very important because you always want to make sure you have a copy of what you submitted. And as much as you possibly can, if you have that information that you can think through and have a copy before you, for example, upload into that company's system, it can be very, very beneficial to you. So that way you're not making mistakes about the information that you submitted. The other thing, and this is critical, if an organization has a webinar or some type of information session regarding a grant process, move heaven and earth, get a babysitter, whatever you need to do to make sure that you are there, be sure that you attend that for two reasons. The first reason is that it ensures that you're well informed about the proposal and application process. The second thing that it does is that that organization is watching and monitoring who is attending. Not that it's necessarily going to be held against you, but it is something that as we're looking through the individuals that have attended, it is something that is noted. So if an organization has a webinar or an information process relative to their grant process, be sure to attend.
Excellent. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody said this up there, but follow directions. And also have a relationship. So now you've done that. You've proofread your application, you've gone after it, you had your mother read it, she told you it's looking good. You went through everything. You used AI, but not to write it, but maybe to check some things, maybe to double check data, which if you do use AI for getting data, make sure you double check that it gave you real data. It's just trying to make you happy, so double check it. And you've got a little bit of a relationship. You're going to the webinars, you have an idea of what's going on, so you've got a strong application. Chevelle, quickly, what does that look? Oh, wait, let me do one more caveat here. She mentioned restricted communication. That varies from agency to agency, by the way. We don't all do it the same. Different people do different rating things. For us, it's very particular and has a timeline. Anyway, during that time, you've got it in, there's restricted communication, you've got your questions answered by Chevelle. Chevelle, what's a strong application look like?
Well, we kind of talked about that in regards to the flow, connecting, for best practices in terms of strong applications, coordinating with your team and looking at those deadlines. Don't let it get away from you. Don't be, the day before the deadline, if you're wrapping up that proposal, give time for the proofreading, give time for someone outside, because they can give you that feedback, because when you're in it, writing, like your program, it inside out for what you're proposing and your vision. When you get that outside eye, they can give you some feedback of, I didn't quite understand maybe this part or this section or can you explain, and that helps you give you that feedback before it gets submitted and will get read internally by a funder or goes to the community. So I would just be repeating myself in regards to some other best practices.
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jim mentioned the cohesion and the continuity of your proposal or your application is critical. Just ensuring that as the reviewers are reading through, it should actually read like a story. So ideally a well-written application or proposal actually reads like a story if you have that cohesion and that continuity. I will say that specific to our organization, there are two things that we really also challenge our grantees or applicants to really focus. The first is on evaluation. Ensuring that you have a mechanism to not only have evaluated the project or the proposal that you're actually the project that you're looking at having funded, but potentially as with your organization as well, that you got those checks and balances in place, whether formally with an external third party, or if you have an internal system, be sure that you have that noted when it comes to that evaluation piece. The second is sustainability. If this is a legitimate viable project, then there should be value in you sustaining it beyond the life of the grant. And so starting with the end in mind, what does this project look like after the funding from our organization is ended? And so that is something that we really challenge our applicants to really think about when planning.
Couple things come to mind, and one is just to ensure that your program description matches your budget. You know, what you say you're going to do matches what those costs are, because hopefully your reviewers can compare that, and they should be the same. And just your responses should be easy to understand, and not too technical. You don't know, the knowledge or the qualifications of that. That's
I really don't have much to add. I know that we covered a lot of this previously about strong applications, but I can express more what Walter said and Jen is the thoughtfulness and the continuity of the application. So a lot of times for our larger grants, we'll ask you for your program overview and then we'll ask you for your evaluation, but then when we get to the milestone document, it doesn't. And so then we're trying to figure out, well, are we funding a bus, a salary, a person, a program? And so for internal Florida Blue employees that don't know a lot about nonprofit and how the work works, and they're also being good steward of the company's money, they're gonna look, okay, this is things like I don't want us to, support this particular program. But making sure the continuity is throughout what you're asking for us to do.
So Tina, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit. What is it, when you did a review, suddenly out of all the ones that came through, you walked away saying, I can see this happening. I really want to see these people make this, how can I help them? What application did that for you and what was it about it that made that happen?
Yeah, so I serve on our internal review committee. The great thing is I don't review any of them, which is good at that. When I review grants for our larger grants, I don't review any of the grants from my region. So I don't see any of our applications from West Florida. This time I reviewed applications from North Florida. It was our food security grant. And they were partnering up with a community college there for food security. And I think even Tampa Bay just installed these, but they were those lockers where you can go and you can kind of put the food in. But their program is focused around, and Walter knew a little bit about this, hunger on college students. College students, we wrote, well, not we, I was. But they don't have money, and so we're focusing on nutritious food and opportunities. Along with that comes with the education portion of it. So they were able to, describe the program for students that are receiving Pell Grants or other federal aid, to support their education. Then they have the opportunity to identify if they felt like they were food insecure, and so then they got into this nutrition program, and then they were able to get food from the locker, and I could easily see okay, I'm a college freshman, I get into this program. And then now I'm seeing the food security, oh, and I'm university cares, I'm learning about all of these things. So just being able to see the vision all the way through, to me, I was definite no brainer. So I voted for that one. We'll see in a couple weeks if they actually got funded, but it's just being able to see and kind of walk through the vision. I think Diana mentioned the one application in Miami, they did through the eyes of one of the student was being able to follow the kind of the trail.
awesome. Thank you.
I think if they offer priority criteria, which we do for our grant programs, that is what the rubric is essentially. So look at that, and then, the questions are something like, is it clear what the organization does? We asked about the viewpoint of individuals served. A lot of ours will be built into the eligibility. We have a lot of eligibility now, but that makes it so the reviewers don't have to do that. So so we focus on historically marginalized communities, and we want that organizations serving those communities, and we want the leadership perspective on that. So we have a certain percentage, and we have to self-identify that kind of information. So we build that into the application, and that's part of that priority criteria. So when you're looking at the priority criteria, that should be, we're trying to remove our own bias and our own, connections and relationships from the process. So that's, we've taken a lot of steps to do that. And, it's been a really interesting process. I had reviewers last time say, well, I was familiar with this organization, but I really stuck to the priority criteria, and that's what they evaluate. So I think that's encouraging. I think to speak for ourselves that we're trying to be more transparent, try to remove those biases, have people that are organizations that are receiving the grants, past grant partners, also be able to make those decisions. So they have that kind of experience. So we're trying to incorporate that. And then we have a new focus this year with all the attacks and threats to immigrants. We intentionally focus on immigrants this year. So we have a specific priority around serving immigrants. So that's just, that's going to be a stronger, that's an added point, both organizations can focus on that. So if anyone get the funders have specific priorities that they're integrated and you serve them, don't indicate something that you're not doing. But, yeah, just look at that priority criteria. Some of the way highlight those avenues and eligible and actively for hire and do that.
The story being told as it hits your priorities. What gives it strength? It makes it come out. Wonderful. Wonderful.
This is probably really boring, but I'm just gonna back up what Chevelle said. Give yourself a deadline, honestly, because we're splitting hairs at the end of the day. Like, we're looking at an application, like said, like, it's not even petty. I mean, it's like, oh, they copied this, okay, out. Oh, they didn't answer this question, okay, out. I mean, at the end of the day, we get so many applications, so give yourself that time, like Chevelle said. I would legitimately give yourself a completely different deadline, because when you're tired, been there too, spent my entire Memorial weekend writing a grant. If I'm reviewing it at midnight, the night before it's due, I am going to miss things. So don't give yourself that opportunity to put yourself in that space, because we are splitting hairs and we are stewards of people's money. I've been on the other side. I've been in those conversations. Oh my God, they have all this money, the community foundation with $1 billion in assets, just give us the money, we're doing the work. I've been in those conversations and I understand it, but also understand that we're responsible for folks' money and we have to make really difficult decisions. So we have to split hairs. So give yourself that time. Don't forget to upload something. Don't answer the wrong question. Don't misspell things. Be succinct and be very clear. And when you give yourself that time and bring in partners when that's not your strength. I am so bad at Excel. It's comical. God bless my boss who sits with me. And I'm like, I just screwed up a formula. I don't know what I did. Find that person. I'm a great storyteller. I was an English major. Like, that part's easy for me, but I'm terrible at Excel and budgets. So find that person wherever they are, give them time and submit a week before. Have it done. Have it done. That would be my best advice.
Yeah, I would just tack onto that, the concept of, probably the questions of a lot of these grants, unless you've never written a grant before, you can probably guess what 80% of these questions are gonna be, right? We're gonna be asking you, how do you measure the results of your work? We're gonna be asking you to ask for some data. How do you incorporate community voice? Like, those are questions that a lot of us ask. And I would say, at least for all the people here, we don't just throw in questions, for kicks and giggles, right? Like, each of these questions should be for a purpose in this way. And so what I would encourage you all to do is, you mentioned, and I agree with Diana, giving yourself some more time. I would take it a step further and say, look at your yearly calendar. And once a year, when you get your newest data in, sort of build some core documents that you can use probably literally for every single one of our grants. That'll save you some time and it'll make sure you have a strong program to begin with, right? You can say, okay, what is our most recent data? What are 2 good stories from this year that came through, right? What is our budget that's readily available? How do we incorporate community voice into our story? How are we continuously improving our work? Like, those are good questions that are passed on a grant, but they're also just good things to do in a program. And so not only do you prepare yourself to write a good grant when they pop up, but it also gives each of your programs a strong core foundation to do the good work that you're doing. And so again, you're providing yourself that time and that context, I think, is really, really important as you're building out a grant and as you're doing this work.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that too. I do believe you know what you're doing. And we are all gonna ask similar questions, but we have our own different spin on it. But the fundamentals of what you do and how you do it are yours. They're not gonna really change just because, we have a different viewpoint. There's different parts of it we'll be interested in, but overall. So know that ahead of time. I think that's great advice, all of this. Great advice, all of it. Let's see, I got distracted with that because I got excited. Thanks.
I want that image, like, I love that. I don't know who created that, but that's adorable.
Thank you, Trish. She did have to go through a few versions. Let's see. I have a capacity building and technical assistance, so maybe I skipped something.
We can do slide for it. We can talk about it.
All right, quick thoughts.
Right, do you want me to do the capacity building thing?
Yeah, why don't you take it away, Doug? You're on.
Why not? I started talking, so I guess so in terms of like capacity building TA, like most of our work, yeah, we give out funds. Most of our work is just engaging with the community in other work and other supports. And so I mentioned before, get to know your funders. Yeah, to have that relationship, but also most of our work is addressing things that are outside of the funding process in providing this technical assistance and addressing what's going on. I'll give you an example of literally this week. 2 weeks ago, we had a partner who called up, who mentioned that they were having some concerns about some of their SNAP recipients because starting October 1st, a lot of their recipients are going to lose some funding with some federal changes and talking about what's going to happen. And in that conversation, I also mentioned, well, do you also know, it's the PSA to you all, that starting October 1st, the federal government will no longer be issuing paper checks to anyone for any funds that the federal government gives. It all has to be electronic. And so if you don't have a bank account or if you don't have an electronic system lined up, they will not get that money. It'll just accrue until they set it up on a bank account. And that's going to be very problematic for especially a lot of our seniors getting Social Security and individuals on disability. And so this conversation, they came to us about SNAP, we worked on that, but then we actually we're bringing in some local banks and credit unions to provide some technical assistance to rural community on this resource so that these individuals now can hopefully have not only a bank account, but one linked to their federal account so that they can keep getting their payments starting October 1. That has nothing to do with our grant making process, but it's going to be huge for those residents and for that community. And I'll tell you, that's 90% of my job is the other pieces and the other work. And so stay connected with us so that we can be talking about how we can be dynamic about what's coming down the pipe and how you guys are addressing it and what help you need and any places where we can help you.
Excellent, excellent. Relationships, that's another key thing that's been going on. And we too have relationships, as you may have figured out. Some of us do talk to each other. We don't necessarily see each other every day, but we do talk to each other, and all of us have different resources. That United Way has this wonderful bank on project that is really helpful in things. Everybody's got different connections, so talk to us. Go ahead, Tina.
I think I'll see you next year. It's really
I'm sorry, Tina.
No, it's a compliment. So I would just say on our end, in terms of the assistance during the grant process, if someone does not receive funding, I swear she probably spends 3 months on half-an-hour calls and she loves it. Brandy, if you don't know her at the Community Foundation, I was like, you need to block your calendar. And she's like, no, I love it. So really, we want to help. We want to provide feedback. So the Community Foundation particularly, you do sign up for a half-an-hour feedback session where we let you know about strengths, to make some areas for improvement. Sometimes it's a tough call, like there just wasn't enough money and we had really tough decisions to make. But here's an idea for something you might do. We also have a partnership with a nonprofit leadership center. They do trainings. There's all sorts of different capacity trainings for nonprofits and then smaller ones or folks that want to start up. And that goes back to relationship, not to be a dead horse, but I'm gonna do it. We've had folks reach out and just say, we really need help in this space, and we kind of finagle something. We're like, I think we can get you in this class. We got a couple like things. So those things happen when you have those relationships, when you reach out. I've had folks, I love curriculum. My background is in curriculum instruction. And so I've had relationships with nonprofits here, and I was in Miami-Dade for a long time, where they would just call and say, can I pick your brain for an hour? And I do that now here, and I enjoy that because it has nothing to do with like grants or like, no one's getting charged. It's just how can I help you? But you have to reach out and have those relationships for that time. So there's lots of different ways, but I always go back to those relationships are incredibly, incredibly important.
Actually, great point, Diana, and as you bring it up, I do think one of the things we didn't talk about is a lot of these organizations, including our own, have dedicated funds to other things. So, yeah, Community Foundation, they got $1 billion. A lot of those funds, though, are dedicated to various interests. So she knows those people, she knows what they're interested in, and they know other people. The relationships become another very important part. I'm sorry, go ahead, Erin.
No, I'm glad you said that though, because this is really important, because we have $1 billion in assets, which sounds insane. And it is, and it goes to show how philanthropic this community is. But those funds are not directed just by the team. The bulk of those funds are directed by donors, but they reach out to us. Like we have a donor, that just says, I feel really passionately about scuba diving. She owned a scuba diving business in Turks and Caicos. They sold it and came here with their partner, so her passion is scuba diving. So when we have these relationships, we literally know, and we'll do research and we'll try and figure it out, but it's easier when we have those. So it's really, really important to stay connected to your funders. But I always want to clarify, because when people throw out $1 billion, it is very exciting. That's a different sort of bucket. That's when we work with our donors. So when we know you and they ask us what's going on in the community, we work really, really hard to research and figure it out. But if we already know you, you're gonna be a step ahead, and in the sense that we can move more quickly and we've seen your work in action. So that's never a waste of time to reach out and just ask to be connected, to see your work or an event or whatever it happens to be, really build upon that.
So, Nancy, relationships. Go ahead, Erin.
I'll just relate this specifically to, the grant writing process. We also do the feedback calls. I did about 30 last year. We had a lot. We had a lot of big interest. We had a lot of declines. We get frustrated when they keep getting declines. It's a humbling experience for me. It's a good experience for me as well. But I hope the majority of folks get some specific feedback. And I look at the scoring and try to get them, look at the scores that were the lowest and give them very specific feedback about where they can improve their application. So if you're not doing that and your funder offers that, please do that, because it's a great opportunity. We're using committees too, so it's not one person making the decision. I don't have control over the committee and how they're going to vote and do things. So it's you're getting a perspective. You're not getting all of the individuals' feedback. I always refer people to grants collaboratives. If you're not familiar, there's a Hillsborough grants collaborative and there's a grants collaborative in Tampa Bay that I think basically serves analysts, and it's here from there or is involved with it. These are seasoned, experienced grant writers, development staff in the community. It's free of charge unless there's like a meal. The Hillsborough one offers a conference every year. So it's free. So the small nonprofits, very small staff nonprofits, people just getting into grant writing, people that are the whole thing, the one person staff team, where the whole process is overwhelming. I think this is a good foray into grant writing in this world in an approachable, supportive, mentoring fashion. So I really encourage you to take advantage of that, spending usually once a month. And then I've been taking notes because I always refer folks to other funders, And there's several of us that do general operating grants, small grants. There was a question that they prepared for, that I didn't see asked about trends and things like that. So I think there's a lot of folks focused on small grants, general operating grants. So I'm curious. I want to connect with our partners when we do something formal, but be a little more intentional because our timing is very around the same time. We're seeing a lot of the same grant partners. And our focus area is pretty limited this year, right? Healthcare access and economic mobility. Last year we had basic needs and that incorporated a lot more folks. So I don't know if the folks I enjoy, if there's somewhere that I can assist them, and the timing's tight, right? There's only one grant cycle a year. I want to make sure that I'm sharing those avenues with them. So I always try to provide some support and assistance and referrals to folks if we're not able to provide the support. And examples like in that feedback call, someone was really struggling with how do I show the feedback? So they asked for a specific example And I did share, you know, I really the organizations know and stuff, but I was able to provide a very specific example for them. Which, you know, they might not have understood on their own, so. All those are options with the organization might be able to do.
So what can we do? Let me say what Walter said, and I wrote it down, I highlighted it in my notes, I'm like, I'm not doing that. You say, short-term funders, long-term partners. So for us, in Florida, we want to be your long-term partner. So outside of like the granting process, we love to educate the community on healthcare. We love to educate the community on insurance. We love to educate the community on Affordable Care Act, the marketplace, how to find affordable health insurance plan for you if you are a small business owner or a small nonprofit. You know, we're here to help educate you. Like, healthcare is difficult. It is complicated. It is confusing, especially, you know, when you're getting into the Medicare, like, age. So there's a whole, like, 2-year, like, ramp-up process, when it comes to, like, Medicare. So we're here to educate. If you are having, community health fairs, or if you're having information related to some of the partners or the clients that you serve, reach out to us. There may be an opportunity for us to partner. We have our beautiful Florida Blue Center that's located on West Shore Boulevard. We love to partner. We love to do lunch and learns. And we were talking with Maggie's movement, and they do a lot of stuff with children in the foster care system as they're about to age out. Well, what are some of the programs that they have that we can use to educate our members? Maybe they're looking to become mentors or help in the foster care system. Like, we're here to be a valued partner with those, like, in the community. We have social workers, like, within our organization. They love to go out, they love to speak. Our nurses love to speak. So if you're doing something related to your clients and it's around, like, cancer, I can reach out to one of our oncology nurses that's here locally and say, hey, Maggie's movement, they're having this program, and are you available to kind of, like, speak and talk about it from a nurse's perspective, but also, like, hey, that's complicated when you're trying to figure out your cancer care and how insurance plays a part into it. Our team is open and we're ready and available to come out and speak and provide, like, additional education.
Excellent. Good. Just a couple things. One is, that the county, we have annual provider meetings, which are just great for updates, changes, all those kind of things that, you know, even if it's invoicing or whatever. So I would encourage people to take advantage of that. And then to kind of piggyback onto what Diana and Aaron said about those post-submittal feedback. With the county, all of our applications and whenever to the state, it's all public record. You can request that. You can get your score sheets. You can get the comments. You can get the other people's. You know, you can get copies of the other proposals. So that's just something that, hey, I didn't get funded, or I don't know, I scored a 10 and they scored a 25. You can kind of compare those. So that, you know, and I know that that's not necessarily for everybody, but for the state and for the county, they're public records, so you can request it. Thanks.
So beyond the grant making process, we really work to be an asset to the community. And so what we found is one of the best ways to go about doing that is to utilize our passion for research and data to really produce information that can be a benefit to organizations like yourself. And so one of the things that it results in what we call research briefs. And so if you haven't been to our website, which I know I didn't mention earlier, which I will mention now, helios.org. There will be a number of different research briefs on a myriad of different topics. We actually just released a research brief and did a webinar last month on innovative scholarships, which is obviously very timely as of right now. One of the other really popular research briefs that we've done recently is also based around the Florida Future Billions campaign. And if you have not heard it, the state of Florida has launched an initiative to have at least 60% of the workforce with an advanced degree by 2030. And so again, this brief focuses in on what is the economic impact of that educational degree from a statewide standpoint. And what we've been able to do is leverage that data on a county-wide basis. So even though, again, we have our 6 focus counties from an investment standpoint, if you go to the website and download this brief, regardless of the county that you're in, it has noted if there is, for example, a 10% increase in the individuals in your county, having the degree, what that looks like from an economic standpoint. And I will say one of the cool things about that is when we get an applicant who will utilize our data in justification for their grant. And so that's, really, really powerful. But again, it also shows that it serves as a resource and a tool for other organizations and other financial opportunities that you all may be pursuing.
And it shows them paying attention to what you're doing, which counts to you as a funder as well. Awesome.
Yeah, in terms of the shelter board, I think of three areas. First of all, on our website, we have an agency capacity checklist. When I have a lot of calls with organizations that are wanting to just get information about our funding opportunities, or it's a brand new organization, that small nonprofit that has just started, I refer them to that agency capacity checklist, and I encourage them to go through as a self-reflection tool for the organization. Whether they're thinking about applying for one of our grants or just other funders and other grants. Because it covers some basic things. Do they have a capital? Do they have reserve? Can they follow a cost reimbursement model? We want to go and, award grants that is not going to be a hardship for an organization. The other thing is we're very transparent about posting documents on our website, including our general terms and conditions. When we release our funding, it shows the general terms and conditions. Don't skip reading those appendix items. Take a look at the links for providers, and look at those tools before considering applying. Make sure you're in a good place as an organization, because we want you to be successful. I already mentioned about when the release is open, there's a window of opportunity to submit questions. Submit those questions. Don't be shy. We want to see them. We want to get answers to you to help you during that process. Post restricted communication and after the funding release is closed, there is that opportunity for feedback that our fellow panelists have mentioned. I'm surprised, honestly, when I don't hear back from people to schedule a feedback meeting. We want to hear from you. We want to schedule a meeting. We want to let you know what went well, what didn't go well, because we want to encourage you to apply again. We don't want to discourage you. Just because we didn't get this grant doesn't mean you should never apply again. I appreciate Diana saying, apply, be brave, keep applying. If it's your first time, this is a learning process. So just continue to reach out. If there's an opportunity to schedule a feedback meeting, put it on the calendar, talk with your team, get a meeting on the books. We love to have those feedback meetings. And it also goes both ways, as Erin mentioned, it's an opportunity too for us to hear back, well, this was not very clear, or something that the next year we can tweak that process. But just keep those things in mind and definitely take a look at that agency capacity checklist. And the other thing, just because it says technical assistance here, I have to mention we do have technical assistance grants. Our capacity building grants. So these grants are not designed for programming, they are designed for capacity building of your organization. So an example is you're running a small show, you are a small nonprofit, you're using outdated computers and that's about to fail or old software. Take a look at our TA grants. It's a great opportunity to help build the infrastructure of your organization. So we do release those annually, and including take a look at them, apply. And so those a few of the strategies and things that we do to provide technical assistance. And then also you get the award, get the grants, know that your program manager is always available for technical assistance.
Yeah, and that's sort of after you get funded. So once you get in the door, but Chevelle was around to talk to you about it. If you want to talk about it ahead of time, know what's getting into it. But this time, how you guys feeling? All right, feeling good? All right. So I did have some questions submitted to us ahead of time that I think we shared, and I'm not going to have everyone answer them in this case. I might just ask one of you to just like throw your thoughts out there. We kind of covered a lot of the information I think that was asked. So I'm just gonna abbreviate it, and then we can probably have time to do a couple questions, Trish, in the audience. What do you think? Yeah, Trish gave the nod, she's the boss. Off we go. So this, one of the first ones was, what are the current funding priorities and trends? How do you see funding and priorities and trends change in the next few years? And this is what I mean. You can kind of see it depends on the agency and what their mission is and what their values are. So unlike governmental funding, where we have more clear trends, they have their own sort of process. With that in mind, does one of you want to jump on the idea of how you're addressing current trends in culture, society, needs, communities that you feel like is sort of what you're leaning toward at the moment? Like last year, there were the emergency things with the hurricanes. Of course, we had to respond, all of us. I mean, that was just, it's critical to have a community. But what other sort of thing do you see more long-term? And any one of you go ahead and choose to jump in. You kind of hinted at some, Walter, with looking at the state and things like that. But
Yeah, one of the things that I just wanted to express is that, especially in the time that we're in, collaboration amongst organizations is going to be critical. You all see that we as funders are collaborating. As resources continue to be reduced, I think what it does is it places us in a position that we should have always been in, which is actually looking towards partnering with organizations that have like-minded and also similar work. And so that's going to be really, really important as we continue over these next few years, are really looking for potential partnerships and opportunities to connect with other organizations within your area of focus of interest, and also too, even if not necessarily for grant opportunities, maybe for projects to really kind of think outside of the box, because there are potential problem-solving opportunities that exist when you have that type of collaboration mindset.
awesome, thank you. Another two were sort of around introduction to other funders and getting to know other funders. How do we get introduced to funders? But I think I have to throw that back on the organization. Some of that is on you. What are you doing? What is your mission? What are your values? You heard now, that's what we're looking for with those things. You can go to the library, believe it or not. They have a huge collection called the Foundation Collection, where you can begin, and a librarian will help you to research various foundations from around, not just the country, but I believe the globe, that may touch on some of the interests you have. You want to look at foundations, you want to look at agencies that fit your mission. You don't want to fit our mission. And frankly, we don't want that. We don't want to become your, we want to help you. We don't want to be you. So that's an important part. Any of you want to say anything to that?
When I said that question, I was just thinking, yes, you can contact us, but some of us have office hours, we want to have relationships, but we're also kind of short staffed at times too. So if there is like a Calendly, an online scheduling thing that you can do yourself, that's preferred. Also read the website, and I have a lot of folks reach out that don't seem like they've read the website or familiar with our programs. And so it's very helpful to me if you come with specific questions. If you know you're not eligible, like certain ones like geographic areas or the budget size are immediate ones that I'm looking at, if that's, I don't want to waste your time and energy with that. So just again, I know it's going to the website and looking at those things, and when you do reach out, and one of the questions to come prepared, specific questions on it. That's very helpful because like everyone, you know, the vultures, the money decreasing and foundations are being, you know, a lot more, there's a lot more, I'm noticing a lot more requests for applications in our war. So there's a lot more people reaching out and stuff like that. So you can drill down like specific questions and review something that not necessarily helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, web search. Straightforward. And there's lots of tools to help you do that web search, but make sure we keep in mind what your question is. Take Aaron's point, so you know what you're gonna do when you meet them. Oh, counties, someone's like, well, how do other counties approach it? It's not about a county thing so much, other than some of us are limited or restricted to various areas because of our funding. Children's Board, we are specifically ad valorem tax dollars. People that live here want to see their money go to things going on here in Hillsborough. United Way, they have a whole region, so they have a couple areas where they need to be responsible and cover. So they're looking out, where is your coverage, where that's going on. Helios, he mentioned his 6 counties, but he's also in a whole nother state. They're in Arizona as well. So there are various aspects you need to keep in mind. And again, it's tailored to what your project is. Does anyone want to say a quick point on that at all? I think I kind of did. So, all right. And we've kind of hit on strategies, although someone there was an expressed concern about the federal cuts going on in various places, and those tend to be part rumor, part reality. It's hard to tell whether hitting and whether not. Some though have hit home. How are we addressing those priorities? Well, as you heard today, federal priorities are not necessarily the priorities of the various funders. It doesn't mean we don't take it into consideration and look at what's going on, because what we're looking at are the solutions to the problems you bring. So if you have something going on, it may happen to be related to federal funds, but they care about what you are doing. Does anyone want to speak about that a little bit more? Did I hit it okay? All right. And now, Christian, to grab the microphone, so we can take a couple of questions and, how much time do you think? 10? Okay, so 10, 15 minutes. You guys good with that? All right, that's what we'll do.
Hello, my name is Keisha Wheeler, and thank you, Chevelle, for inviting me here. We have a grief support group for children in Brandon. I'm a widow myself, so I know how important it is to have that support. I have 7 children. And I had a quick question for Tina. And you made a very good point about with grant writing and applying for grants. I actually made a faux pas that I didn't know at that moment, but I kind of spilled everything. And, you were just like, how will this, this grant assist this specific need? And I was just like, well, we do this, but we also need to have a dream to do that. So in that situation, because I truly didn't know, what would be your advice on how to go toward that? For instance, we do have a program where we meet bi-monthly. We do in-person peer support. That's our basic program. But the grant was like between 10,000 and 50,000. And I was just like, well, if they gave us 50,000, we could build our respite home for families to have a brief getaway. So I'm just gonna put all of that in there, and so I was so glad that you called that out, and I was glad to know that I had made that mistake, and just wanted to know what's a good way to rectify that, or moving forward, what's the better way to step into the situation?
Yeah, no, great question. A couple of thoughts, I'll be quick. So, according to our regional grants, we say, we'll fund up to 50,000. So people put, 49,999. But then when you're asking us to support, I'm like, you think $49,000. Like, worth of work. If it's something for us, and I can speak for Blue, if it's something like you mentioned, group support groups, we do a lot of group support work, especially with youth and kids in Southwest Florida and the Naples area. So for some of the stuff that we carved out to support them, is what's your specific program? You mentioned that you have a monthly support group, they do a camp, they do a monthly support group. And so it allows us to really fine tune it. So if you're looking to support that bi-monthly support group, they say, hey, we're looking to do the bi-monthly support group, and this is what the funding, go towards. Don't add, because then I'm like, okay, you're doing the group, you're doing the building, you're doing, and for me, our regional process is different. I think, we go in a calendar year. So I like to tell people our first opens in January, and that's getting money until it's in. Most nonprofits, their year starts on July 1. So you're coming to me July 30 or August 1, I'm already out. So for us, now is the time we can start to talk, we can identify like, yeah, let's talk a little bit about your grade program. Let me come out, let me figure this out. And there are certain areas that our market president is very passionate about. So I will review our grant applications, provide my recommendations to him on what we should support. Some of them be like, oh, let's go and see this. I want to spend time, I want to figure out outside of this grant, what are other ways that we can support this organization? So I would say, identify in that grant exactly what it is that you want support for. And then it may give you an opportunity somewhere in the grants, like when you give your overview. In the future, we would love to, establish a building, because then for us, sometimes we get extra, dollars from the corporation where we're able to invest large, dollars in capital campaigns. So in my mind, I have a list, I'm like, okay, they're looking to do a capital campaign sometime, down the line, like, let me put that on my list as an opportunity for us to kind of.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, thank you also for inviting us here. I'm Shawnee, I'm coming from Cristo Rey, Tampa. One of the challenges that I found, and I'm new to grant writing, so all of this has been super helpful. How do we show the amount of people we're impacting, being authentic, but also being realistic? We're a small school, so technically we are directly impacting a certain amount of students, but we're also impacting the community in a bigger way. How do we show that without sounding like we're lying? Sure.
Can I jump in? I've had some applications for folks lie. Please don't lie. We're all aware that in life, we're all human, but some people stretch and some people lie, no matter what sector they're in. So I would be very honest, and that's when the story matters. Let's say you're working with 20 kids. If you have impacted 20 kids and you have impacted their siblings, you've impacted their parents, you've impacted their neighborhood, speak to that story of impact, because it's not just a big number. It's not like, oh, they're doing mentoring for 200 kids or 2,000, like, it goes a lot deeper than that. So I'll be very brief, but that's where the storytelling really matters and the ripple effect of your program. You can speak to that.
I know that in our work, two terms that are helpful for us are direct and indirect when it comes to impact. And so, for example, within your school, the students that you currently work with directly are your direct impact students. Now, those peripheral and those other, especially if you do, and I'm very familiar with Cristo Rey, with the field trips you all take, with the various things you all do in the community, how many of those other students that are not direct students within Cristo Rey are you all impacting as well? And those are your indirect impact students.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Julie Wood with Just Initiative. And someone on the panel mentioned about joint applications, and I know collaboration is like really good and the way that things are moving. So I want an example. I'm wondering, in a joint application, is there usually one of the nonprofits are the lead applicant and someone is coming under that? And what's an example of a successful joint application?
Yeah, so I said that's why I can start, we can jump in. So there's a couple different ways to do it. And honestly, I know this sounds silly to begin with, but whatever your best format is the best format to present. So we've had partners, especially large entities that are connected with smaller ones on the ground, where it just makes sense for the large one to be what's called a fiscal agent. And a fiscal agent is a nonprofit that's able to assume all the technical financial aspects of a grant, and that they can then work with other smaller nonprofits that are more grassroots. So those smaller ones can focus more on the service delivery and don't have to worry about the technical aspects of the grant. So that's one way that it can be done. Another way is a true joint collaborative partnership. In how the partners are working toward different components. So we've had a joint collaborative around educational supports and workforce development, in which we have a program that provides wraparound case management services from a nonprofit that provides these support and services. But for those nonprofit entities that need food supports, they're going to be connected with a local food support nonprofit. And for those that have children 0 to 5, they're connected with 0 to 5 nonprofit. And they're all working collaboratively in that space. And so that's another way that can be done, but at least I can only speak for United Way. Typically, when there's a collaborative relationship, we will still only fund one entity. So one person gets the money and it is their job to respectfully distribute it according to the terms of what you propose. And so, yeah, so there's a variety of different ways to go about it. What I would encourage if you're doing a collaborative relationship is build trust between the nonprofits who are applying well before you write the application. Because trust will allow you to make a truly collaborative and powerful application. I won't name names, but we worked with one that provided a collaborative application that was just built for them both to get the money. And you could tell they did not work well together. And we saw it and they saw it and it wasn't successful. And so build that trust first, for sure, if you're looking at collaborative sales. Also, since I have the mic, just really quick to note, I apologize, I have to be in Manatee County at noon. I'm already late, just to be clear. But I probably will have to leave in about 2 or 3 minutes, just so you all know. If somebody's gonna ask a question, then I'm gonna leave. It's not because I'm mad at you. I'm already late for my next time.
The United Way specific question. Ask it now. Here we go.
You got your business card, so we.
Oh, I'll write an email on this.
Suncoast United Way, they're on the web, and Doug, I think is,
Special contact.
he's actually named. He's, I believe you can get his name on that website.
My name is Christy Ornament, in state of Tampa Bay, we're out of Oklahoma, Florida, and we were children and going to work on the community. My question is, and it might be a little bit further down, just to leave it back on the survey's question. When you are working with vulnerable populations and giving the current climate that we're in, when we are forecasting who we're going to be supporting, there's also like a follow-up for demographic information. Are we changing the criterion for how we gather that information? Because it does become very difficult when you are trying to gather the information, who you are providing services for, because they're not necessarily in the census for the communities that we serve, out of fear, out of not bringing attention to themselves. Are we making those modifications as yeah?
I can jump in on my end. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm gonna say, transparently, our hearts are breaking too across funders and nonprofits, and we're here to serve those that are in need. Full point. So that's where, once again, I would just say that most folks will understand the complexities and the challenges that we're facing right now, and use that application to speak to what is. At the foundation, we're really not concerned, so I can only say that for the community foundation. I understand that there are restrictions, with other organizations, but use that application, use that time to speak to who you're serving, where the challenges are. I've spent a lot of time in Miami-Dade, and that was a major issue, so I'm aware of it. The challenges of getting folks into schools and into programming and the fear that's surrounding that right now. But make the assumption that people might not know that, or they might not understand, and that's when you want to utilize that application to tell that story, what the experience looks like and how your program will address that.
My name is Ernie Shell. I'm with eBay Heritage Center out in Wellmont. And we're starting a new performing arts center. And a lot of the data is not there, and that's the value of the center. But you talk about how music is very good for mental health. How do I build, how do we build that data to satisfy our outcomes and what we plan to do?
It's always good to ask us too, when you're doing that, say if you have any recommended data sources. But I will let, let's give Doug a quick hand. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you all. Let's do it.
Really appreciate
Take
it.
care.
But anyway, would anyone else like to speak quickly about data?
Yeah, I can speak quickly and answer your question. So just yesterday, I was meeting with United Arts in Collier County. And we were having the same conversation about how we show our data. I'll get your information. There is a researcher out of the University of Florida. Her name is Levine right now, but she has compiled so much data and it's open and it's available for the public to use, for those purposes. So for a very long time, arts organizations couldn't really tie like the data and what they're doing and how, you know, like, I grew up a dancer, so as a former dancer, I know that it's providing you with like discipline, structure, being able to, you know, follow authority and confidence, but you can't. So like, she's just dancing, how is that providing, you know, all of that for her? So this researcher out of University of Florida, she's pulled all this data and information together, truly fact-based, data. So I'll get you her contact information so that you're able to connect with her and definitely use her data source to be able to, you know, support applications and grants. But we know that the arts is transformative in the work that it does. It's just some funders, unless you come from, you know, that background, they don't understand it. They don't get it.
I think.
And just very briefly, just that's for everyone. If you're starting something new, find where it's been successful. And just say, this is what's happened, this is the data behind that, I want to do that here. We do that with children's savings accounts in Miami. It wasn't a Miami thing, it actually, I think, started in Jersey, like Pretty Booker or something. And it was like, oh my God, look how it's changed lives. I want that here. Make that argument. You don't have to already have done it, but show where it works and how you're going to make it work here.
And
Go ahead.
I was just gonna add to, there's a going on community. Look to your community. Can you have a mini town hall? Can you have a focus group? Can you survey that by mama community to help you start building your data to establish your need for your program, with feedback coming straight from the community.
That we need to wrap up the questions. So we want to do a couple things. One, please make sure you fill out the feedback survey on the table. We should mark, oh, this is worth your time. We really appreciate it. We are going to have a follow-up meeting on the 22nd, but don't think you can't reach out in the meantime to Trish James and let her know your thoughts, ideas, anything that could help improve the process. We also then want to give you a little time to network, meet people, talk a little bit. And with that, did I cover it? Yeah. Oh, September 22nd, we're gonna wrap up this time so people can network a little bit. And I want to thank you for coming here and hope you got some bullet points and takeaways. I know I did, and it's so good to see all you guys again. You know, it's nice to reach out.
Will the video be available for us to review?
Yes, we'll be having ongoing conversation until through September 22nd at least, right? I'll send you out the video, information that we found, some information that's coming up to us. If you have information you want to share, by all means, send it to us. So this is an ongoing conversation. September 22nd, we'll have Nonprofit Leadership Center here along with other nonprofits who have been through the experience from small.
So with that, thank you very much for coming. It's so nice to see you all.